Today we're in Ithaca at Cornell University with Wendy Strobil. Wendy, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Wendy Strobil, thank you so much for talking to us today.
My pleasure.
Can you just tell me a little bit about how we can use technology to assist people with disabilities in the workplace?
Sure. Technology has a lot of power for a lot of people. A lot of times it can enable people to do things in innovative ways, in ways that they don't normally do them. And for people with disabilities, this can be the difference between working and not working in some cases. For example, if there's someone who can't type, using a voice-activated input program can allow them to get information into the computer without having to physically use their hands. It can also do things like make things easier for people so that they can do things more efficiently or more quickly. So something that might have taken them a long time can be a lot easier. For example, there was a gentleman that I worked with who had a spinal cord injury and he couldn't bend over. And in order to do his job, he had to turn on a computer and a couple other office machines. And it took him about a half an hour to do that without any accommodation. So we took all of his appliances and plugged them into a power strip. And we put the power strip in his top drawer, so all he had to do was reach over and turn on one switch. So that took that test from a half an hour to about a minute. Just making it a lot easier and more efficient for him to get that task done.
So what you're saying is that we can design our workplaces for success for all people?
I think, yeah, and I think this is very true. Employers, we often talk about reasonable accommodation for people with disabilities and the changes that you have to make for people with disabilities, but oftentimes changes that you might make for someone with a disability can benefit all people in the workplace. There are different kinds of mice that people use. The standard mouse that you use with your computer, I'm incapable of using because you have to have so much space available and my desk is very messy. So I use a trackball mouse, which is an upside down mouse, which allows me just to keep my mouse in the same place and move the trackball versus moving the mouse. So simple things like that can really make a difference for a lot of people.
And how do we find out about these technologies? Is there a place where they're available?
In the States, we have a service called the Job Accommodation Network that it's grant funded and it offers a call-in service where you can call up their experts and explain the situation, and they can provide recommendations as to what device might or piece of technology might work for you. There's a number of people and experts who work with people with disabilities who have a knowledge of solutions and devices that may be beneficial. Occupational therapists and physical therapists can be another good resource for a lot of employers, just to get some ideas about how to do things differently. But I think the most important resource, if you're working with someone with a disability who needs an accommodation, is to ask the person with the disability, how would you like to do this task? What might work for you? Because they've spent their entire lives doing things differently and figuring out the most efficient and the best way to accomplish a lot of tasks. So it's always a good idea to start by asking the person with a disability what they think is going to work for them.
Yep, great. And what about diversity? Do you think diversity is important in our workplaces?
You know, I really think it's critical, and it's not just important because the law says we have to have a certain number of different minorities. I think it's critical because it creates a work environment where difference is acceptable, where different thought processes come up and people think outside the box. If you have a work environment where everyone's the same, you're going to get the same ideas over and over and over again. Where if you have a workplace where everyone's different and their backgrounds are different and their experiences are different, when you bring those people to a table and say, let's come up with some new ideas, everyone has a different perspective and can really say, here's some exciting things from my experience that we can try. So I think it's critical for a lot of different reasons, but mostly that outside the box creative thinking. It also draws in different customers. People like to patronize businesses that are like them. So if you have a workplace that's all the same, you're going to get all the same customers. But you really have an opportunity to broaden your market if you're bringing in a lot of different people from different backgrounds and resources. And you know how to serve those people, because different cultures have different expectations of what good customer service is. And when you are pulling from different populations, they know what those expectations are and can share that with you.
Great. And how do we employ people from diverse backgrounds in a non-discriminatory fashion?
I think that you have to be careful when you recruit. The first step, I would say, is education. Your managers and your HR staff need to be aware of diverse backgrounds. They need to have an understanding of different cultures. For people with disabilities, they have to be aware of what good disability etiquette is, because you don't want to alienate people when they're coming in to put in an application or to an interview. You want to make sure that they're comfortable, because they're also, when you're interviewing someone, they're also interviewing you, essentially.
Exactly.
So make sure that they're going to be comfortable. And I think the other thing is, you have to make sure when you're recruiting, you don't just look in the same sources. You don't just go to the local colleges. You also go to disability service organizations, or maybe colleges that represent people from other populations. Or you go to services such as Getting Hired, which is a database of people with disabilities who've submitted their resumes and are actively looking for work. That you can get a different pool than you would normally get. Organizations like the Business Leadership Network or the Society for Human Resources Management have done a lot of work in this area and have some really good information that you can get on the internet. That's a great resource for employers to go and get more information.
Oh, great. And what about promoting a friendlier environment to people with diversities?
I think most important, you have to educate everyone in your organization. You have to make sure that supervisors and managers are aware of etiquette of interacting with people from different groups. You have to make sure that your regular staff understands different aspects of disability etiquette, of different cultures. There can be a lot of issues that come up when that education is not there. Just as an example, there was an organization in New Jersey that was hiring a number of people who were of a different religion. And every day at about 2 o'clock, I think it was 2 o'clock, they had to go in and they had to wash their feet as part of their prayer ceremony. So they would go in the bathroom and wash their feet in the sink, and the other employees were like, "Oh, that's disgusting. I don't know why you're doing that, but it's not okay." So the business went in and changed the faucets and put some sinks at foot level so that they could use that. Then they were getting their cultural needs met, and it stopped freaking out the other employees so much, which can be really critical. And it's the same for people with disabilities when you make an accommodation in the workplace. Let's say that someone with a disability needed a special office chair, and everyone in the office wants a new chair. And they think, I wish I could have a new chair too. And so they will immediately start saying, why did he get one and I didn't? So I think you have to have the discussion of, what fair is. And, that fair doesn't mean that everybody gets what they want. It means that everyone gets what they need, which is a really critical step. And also I think in terms of leave, if someone with a disability needs some leave time that someone else isn't getting, well, you let so-and-so come in late. There really has to be an awareness of the civil rights and disability laws. For example, let's say that we have the Family Medical Leave Act. So if you were to get sick on the job, you could take some time off. I don't know if you have something similar in Australia. So that person may be able to take 2 weeks off to go to doctor's appointments, that kind of thing. And someone else might be saying, well, that's not fair. So instead of saying it's a disability issue, because you don't want to disclose for someone with a disability, you can say, according to our policy and laws, this person is entitled to that, just as you would be if you needed that kind of a leave as well. So there has to be an understanding of the different kinds of benefits and laws and services that are available, I think in general, so that when situations like that come up, it's not such a surprise. because it can be an issue.
And finally, if we're managing people with disabilities, can you give us a couple of tips for that?
I think the most important thing is that you want to treat people with disabilities just like you would treat anybody else. They're an employee and they're a person, and just as an employee may come to you and say, my daughter missed the bus today, I have to drive her to school, someone with a disability may say, my wheelchair won't work today and I can't come to work on time. So I think it's just a matter of equal treatment and fairness. Keep an open mind, keep your door open, make sure that your policies are clear and equally applied, so that if there's an issue that comes up on a regular basis with someone, you have a clear process of what's going to happen to that person if they're continually late. But the research shows that people with disabilities are no more likely to be absent, they don't require more supervisor time, and honestly, they're more likely to stay in a job longer that's working for them. So if you are an exemplary employer, if you're doing a really good job accommodating people, you're going to make sure you keep your staff longer, which cuts recruitment costs and makes sure that you keep that important institutional knowledge.
We've been speaking with Wendy Strobil. Wendy, thank you so much for speaking with us and sharing your insights.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for talking with me today.